All right, so let's dive into a deep dive today, all about the world of mobile advertising.
Ooh,
We're
excellent.
looking specifically at a company called Affle India.
Okay.
You ever get that feeling like your phone's listening to you?
All the time.
Like you're talking about something and then bam, you start seeing ads for it everywhere.
Yeah, like I was literally just talking about needing new shoes the other day,
Yeah.
and then suddenly my entire Instagram feed is just shoes, shoes, shoes.
That's exactly the kind of thing that Affle is doing. They're connecting brands with consumers right on their phones.
So they're the ones behind all those targeted ads.
That's right. But what's really interesting about Affle is that they're not just about throwing ads out there and hoping for the best.
So what makes them different?
They're laser focused on making sure that those ads actually lead to you doing something.
Okay, so like actually buying something
Yeah.
or signing up for a service or downloading an app.
Exactly. They call it cost per converted user, or CPCU.
CV.
It's like their secret sauce because almost all of their revenue, like a whopping 99.2% last quarter, came from this CPCU model.
So they only get paid when the ad actually works.
That's a pretty bold approach, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, most advertising platforms are just happy to get those impressions or clicks.
Right. They're not really concerned about whether you actually end up buying anything.
But with Affle, it seems like they're really invested in making sure that the ads are actually relevant to the user.
And it seems to be working because in just Q3 of FY25, that's October to December of 2024, they delivered over 103 million converted users.
Wow, it's a huge number.
Yeah, it's a 23.3% increase from the same time last year. So yeah, chances are if you took action on an ad on your phone recently, Affle might have been behind it.
That's impressive growth for sure. But it makes you wonder, is it sustainable?
Right. Are they just riding a wave or is there something more to it?
Like, are they reliant on a few big clients? And what happens if those clients leave?
These are all really important questions that we're going to need to consider as we dig deeper.
Definitely, let's not get too carried away by the hype.
Exactly. But speaking of numbers, how did all those converted users translate into actual money for Affle?
Well, get ready for some pretty impressive figures.
Okay, I love impressive figures.
Their revenue shot up to Rs 601.7 crore.
Okay, hold on. That's a lot of crores.
I know, right? It's a 20.6% jump year over year.
So to put that in perspective, imagine a small shop suddenly earning like a big supermarket.
Yeah, that's the scale of Affle's jump.
And their profitability is even more remarkable.
Oh, yeah, their EBITDA, which stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
So basically how efficiently they're making money.
Exactly. Soared by 35.9%, reaching Rs 131.4 crore.
Those are some serious numbers.
And their profit after tax, a solid Rs 100.2 crore, a 30.5% increase.
Wow, so they're not just growing, they're also becoming more profitable.
Exactly. And all of this is happening at a time when a lot of companies are struggling with the global economic situation.
So they're definitely doing something right.
It makes you wonder what their secret is.
Yeah. Right. Are they just riding the wave of growth in India, or is there something more to it?
That's a great question. And it turns out they're not just focusing on India.
Oh, really?
Their earnings presentation actually shows that they're strategically tapping into both emerging markets and developed markets.
So they're diversifying their reach.
Exactly. They're not putting all their eggs in one basket, which makes them less vulnerable if one region hits an economic snag.
That's a smart move for sure.
So to answer your question, their India and emerging market segment still makes up the majority of their revenue, about 73.6%.
Okay.
But their developed market segment is actually growing at a slightly faster pace.
Interesting. So they're not just an Indian company anymore. They're a global player.
That's right. And that global reach could be a key to their continued success.
But with so many companies struggling, how are they achieving this kind of growth and profitability?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
The CEO talks a lot about higher productivity, operational efficiency, and continuous innovation in the press release.
Those are some good buzzwords.
Yeah, but are they more than just buzzwords?
Well, they do suggest that the company is laser focused on doing more with less, constantly tweaking its operations and technology to stay ahead of the curve.
And they're also putting a lot of emphasis on AI and machine learning.
Yeah, that seems to be a key part of their strategy, using it to target ads even more effectively and to tackle ad fraud, which is a huge problem in the industry.
It's like they're building this super sophisticated engine to power their growth.
But we need to see if they're actually walking the walk, right?
Exactly. So let's take a look at some real-world examples.
Good idea.
Affle has released a few case studies that give us a peek into how they're working with major brands.
Okay, so we're going from the theory to the practice.
Exactly. We'll start with Wallapop.
Wallapop.
Yeah, you know that app for buying and selling used stuff.
Oh, yeah, I've used that.
So they were able to significantly grow their user base using Affle's platform.
I'm curious to see how they did that.
Me too.
Let's dive in. Okay, so Wallapop, what's the story there?
Well, they wanted to boost activity on their platform, and a key part of that was turning existing buyers into sellers.
Interesting. So instead of just attracting anyone, they were specifically going after people who were already showing signs of being interested in selling.
That's right. Talk about efficiency.
And how did Affle help them do that?
They used something called multi-event optimization.
Multi-event optimization.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Basically, their algorithms focus on user actions that are more likely to lead to future conversions.
So they're not just spending money blindly. They're actually seeing a return on their ad efforts.
Exactly, which is what any savvy business wants.
But hold on, how do they know that those new sellers weren't just going to become sellers anyway?
That's a good question, and that's where lift measurement comes in.
List measurement.
Yeah, it's a way of making sure that the ads are actually driving those new sellers, not just catching people who would have become sellers regardless.
So they're proving that their ads are actually making a difference.
Exactly, they're not just taking credit for something that was already going to happen.
Okay, I'm starting to see why Affle's getting so much buzz.
But what about the ads themselves? Are they just basic banners or something more sophisticated?
That's where advanced creatives come into play.
Advanced creatives.
They use a mix of formats, including dynamic product ads that show specific products relevant to the user and tutorial ads that guide users through the process of listing an item.
So it's not just about getting the right message to the right person, it's also about presenting that message in the most engaging and effective way possible.
Right, because a boring ad is just going to get ignored.
Exactly. So did this approach work?
Oh, it did. Wallapop saw over 90% annual growth in listers in Italy
Wow.
and over 56% growth during the calendar year in Spain.
That's not just growth, that's explosive growth.
And it was directly tied to how Affle targeted the right users with the right message at the right time.
Okay, so we're seeing how Affle is helping businesses grow.
But what about the consumers?
Right. Is this level of targeting beneficial for them, or is it just creepy and intrusive?
Yeah, that's a big question, isn't it?
Yeah. It is. It's a fascinating paradox.
How so?
Well, on the one hand, we all crave personalized experiences.
Yeah, I love it when Netflix recommends shows that I actually want to watch.
Exactly. But at the same time, we value our privacy.
Right, we don't want to feel like we're constantly being tracked and targeted.
It's a tough balance to strike.
It is, and companies like Affle are right at the forefront of that challenge.
Trying to figure out how to use data responsibly without crossing that line.
And, even beyond the ethics of it all, there's a really practical question here. Does this kind of hyper-targeted advertising actually work?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is, and the answer, as with most things in life, is nuanced.
So there's no easy answer.
Not really. There's no doubt that targeting can be incredibly effective when done right.
Right. Like, if you can show me an ad that's genuinely relevant to my interests and needs.
Exactly. I'm more likely to pay attention and even take action.
It's like that age-old saying, right message, right person, right time.
Exactly. But the flip side is that if the targeting is off, it can be incredibly annoying and even off-putting.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about something random, and suddenly, bam, ads for it everywhere.
It can feel like a violation of your privacy, even if you've technically consented to data collection somewhere along the way.
And that's where the whole trust factor comes in.
Consumers need to feel like companies are using their data responsibly and transparently.
Otherwise, they're just going to tune out completely.
Exactly. They'll start using ad blockers or just ignoring ads altogether.
And that's not good for anyone?
No, it's not. So this is where Affle's emphasis on ethical data practices and transparency could be a real differentiator for them.
If they can convince consumers that they're not just out to exploit their data.
Yeah, that they're actually trying to use it to create a better, more personalized experience.
That could be a huge win.
It's a long game, but building that trust is essential for long-term success.
As we're talking about all of this, I'm reminded of a quote from Affle's CEO, Anuj Khanna Sohum.
Oh yeah, what did you say?
He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that as return on ad spend, ROAS and ROI, become even more critical for advertisers, Affle's focus on conversions-driven CPCU advertising positions them at the forefront of delivering consistent, scalable, and profitable outcomes for brands globally.
It's a bold vision, but actions speak louder than words, right?
Exactly. Will this focus on conversions lead to a better experience for consumers?
Or will it just lead to more intrusive ads?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is, are they prioritizing user experience or just chasing those conversions?
We'll have to wait and see.
Definitely. But speaking of growth, we talked about how Affle is expanding beyond India.
Right. Do you think they face any unique challenges as they enter new markets?
Absolutely.
Mm.
Each market has its own cultural nuances,
Hmm.
consumer behaviors, and regulatory landscape.
So, what works in India might not necessarily translate seamlessly to, say, Europe or North America.
Exactly. They can't just copy and paste their strategy.
They'll need to adapt and be sensitive to those local differences.
And let's not forget about competition.
Oh, yeah, they're going up against some major players in the global advertising space.
Companies with deep pockets and established networks.
It's a David versus Goliath situation in some ways.
So what do you think are Affle's biggest strengths as they face these challenges?
What sets them apart from the competition?
Well, their CPCU model is definitely a key differentiator.
Right, because it aligns their incentives with those of their clients.
Exactly. They're focusing on results, not just impressions.
And that could be a powerful selling point as advertisers become increasingly demanding about seeing a return on their investment.
It's like they're saying, we're not going to waste your money. We're only going to get paid if we deliver.
That's a pretty compelling proposition.
Another strength is their focus on emerging markets.
Right, they have a deep understanding of those markets,
And they've built strong relationships with local businesses and consumers.
which gives them a competitive edge as these markets continue to grow.
Exactly. And those markets represent a significant opportunity for advertisers.
It's like they've got a head start in a race that's just getting started.
And let's not underestimate the power of their technology and data analytics capabilities.
Right, they're leveraging AI and machine learning to constantly optimize their campaigns.
Targeting the right users and preventing ad fraud.
So it's a combination of a unique business model, deep market knowledge, and cutting-edge technology.
Exactly. It's a powerful combination.
But are there any potential weaknesses we should be aware of?
Well, while their focus on emerging markets is a strength, it could also be seen as a potential weakness.
How so?
What happens if those markets experience economic downturns or political instability?
Right. Could that impact Affle's growth trajectory?
It's a possibility. And
Yeah.
while their CPCU model is innovative, it also requires a high level of trust from their clients.
Because advertisers need to be confident that Affle is accurately tracking conversions.
And that they're not engaging in any shady practices.
Maintaining that trust is crucial for their long-term success.
It's like building a house on a foundation of trust.
If that foundation cracks, the whole thing could crumble.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the ever-evolving regulatory landscape around data privacy.
Right, as governments around the world tighten regulations on data collection and usage.
Affle will need to navigate these complexities carefully and ensure they're staying ahead of the curve.
It's a constantly moving target, but they've shown an ability to adapt and innovate.
So you're cautiously optimistic.
I am, but we've talked about their strengths, their challenges, their commitment to ethical data practices.
But at the end of the day, what does all of this mean for the average person scrolling through their phone?
That's the question we always need to come back to.
How does all of this high-level business strategy impact the actual user experience?
Right. Will we see more personalized and relevant ads?
Or will we just see more intrusive and annoying ads?
Well, if Affle can successfully walk that tightrope between personalization and privacy.
We might see a future where ads are less intrusive, more relevant, and actually enhance our mobile experience.
Like, imagine a world where ads are helpful recommendations rather than annoying interruptions.
That would be a game changer.
But if they stumble, if they prioritize profits over privacy,
We could be headed for a future where our phones feel less like tools and more like surveillance devices.
it's a fork in the road.
And Affle's choices will have a significant impact on the future of mobile advertising and how we experience it.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've looked at Affle's impressive growth, their unique business model, their global expansion plans.
Yeah, the challenges they face.
But before we wrap things up, let's take a closer look at the leadership behind this company.
Okay.
We mentioned earlier that Anuj Khanna Soham, the CEO, has been appointed as chairperson for the next 10 years.
Yeah. What are the implications of that move?
Well, it's certainly a bold statement of confidence from the board.
Appointing a CEO as chairperson for such a long tenure.
It suggests a strong belief in Soham's leadership and his vision for the company,
But 10 years is a long time.
especially in the fast-paced world of technology.
Do you think this could be a double-edged sword?
It could be, while it provides stability and a clear direction, it also raises questions about adaptability and agility.
Like, what if the market shifts dramatically?
Or what if new technologies emerge that disrupt the industry?
Will this long-term appointment hinder Affle's ability to pivot and respond to these changes?
It's a valid concern. Stability can be great.
But too much stability can lead to stagnation.
Exactly. It will be interesting to see how Soham navigates these potential challenges.
And whether this long-term appointment ultimately proves to be a boon or a bane for Affle's future.
It's a gamble for sure, but one that could pay off big time if they play their cards right.
So as we move into the final stretch of our deep dive into Affle India,
I'm curious to hear your overall assessment. Are you bullish or bearish on their future?
that's a tough one. I'm cautiously optimistic, I think.
Cautiously optimistic.
They have a lot of things going for them. A strong track record, a unique business model, and a clear vision for the future. But the challenges are real. The competition is fierce, and the ethical considerations are significant.
See, it's not a slam dunk.
Not at all. Ultimately, their success will depend on their ability to navigate these complexities, adapt to a changing market, and maintain the trust of both their clients and consumers.
It's a story that's still being written.
And we'll be watching closely to see how it unfolds.
But before we sign off, let's leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about the business side of things.
The numbers, the strategies, the competition.
But what about the human side?
What does Affle's journey tell us about the broader impact of technology on our lives?
How do we balance the convenience and personalization that technology offers with the potential risks to our privacy and autonomy?
Those are questions we all need to grapple with as we navigate this increasingly digital world.
So to our listeners out there,
We challenge you to think critically about the role of technology in your own lives.
and to demand transparency and accountability from the companies that collect and use your data.
It's our data, it's our privacy, and it's our responsibility to ensure that technology serves us, not the other way around.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Affle India and the future of mobile advertising. Okay, so we've talked about all this growth and expansion and these amazing results, but
Right.
it all comes back to data, right?
It does.
And that brings us to the really important question of how Affle handles something that you listening right now care about a lot.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Privacy?
Ah, yes, the big P word.
It's more than just a buzzword these days, right?
It's not just a buzzword, it's a fundamental concern for anyone using the internet these days.
Especially on their phones.
Yeah. Think about all the data that your phone collects about you.
It's kind of scary when you stop and think about it.
It is. And for a company like Affle that's built on collecting and analyzing this user data,
It's absolutely critical that they get this right.
if people don't trust you with their information, they're not going to engage with your platform, plain and simple. So what is Affle doing to build that trust and address those privacy concerns?
Well, they seem to be taking a multi-pronged approach.
Okay, break it down for me.
Their website and press releases highlight transparency, consent, and data security as their guiding principles.
Those are good starting points, but what do those actually look like in practice?
Well, they emphasize giving users control over their data.
Okay, so users have choices.
Exactly, and providing clear explanations about how that data is being used.
So it's not just about burying those details in a lengthy privacy policy that no one ever reads.
Right, it's about making those choices clear and accessible to users.
So like giving users a say in how their data is used rather than just taking it without asking.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But how do they actually protect that data once they have it?
that's a big question.
Yeah, well, they talk about things like data anonymization and encryption.
Okay, so what does that mean?
Basically, it means they're taking steps to remove personally identifiable information and scramble the data to make it unreadable without the proper keys.
So even if someone managed to hack into their system,
They wouldn't be able to easily connect that data back to individual users.
that's reassuring, but it also makes me think about all the data breaches we hear about these days.
Right, they happen all the time.
Is Affle doing anything specific to prevent those?
Well, they haven't publicly detailed all of their security measures.
Which is understandable.
Yeah, giving away too much information could actually make them more vulnerable.
Right, it's like giving the bad guys a blueprint.
But they do mention things like regular security audits and adhering to industry best practices for data protection.
So they're not just setting it and forgetting it?
No, they're actively working to stay ahead of the bad guys and protect user data.
That's good to hear. But beyond the technical safeguards, it sounds like they're also trying to foster a culture of data ethics within the company.
That's key. It's not just about having the right policies and procedures in place.
It's about having the right mindset.
Exactly. It's about creating an environment where everyone understands the importance of responsible data handling.
And that starts at the top.
We've already talked about the fact that Affle's CEO has been appointed as chairperson for the next 10 years.
Right, a pretty long tenure.
Do you think this signals a genuine commitment to ethical data practices?
Well, It's hard to say for sure, but it's certainly a positive sign.
It suggests a long-term vision and a desire to build a sustainable and responsible business.
But as always, actions speak louder than words.
We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I am left with a mix of excitement and caution.
I agree. Affle is a fascinating company with a lot of potential.
They're pushing the boundaries of mobile advertising, delivering impressive results for their clients, and expanding into new markets,
But they're also operating in a complex and constantly changing landscape.
where the ethical stakes are incredibly high.
It's a tightrope walk,
Yeah.
and it'll be fascinating to see if they can maintain their balance as they move forward.
And for our listeners out there, this deep dive is just the beginning.
Yeah, keep digging, keep learning.
We encourage you to explore further. Check out Affle's website, read their case studies, and form your own opinions.
Don't just take our word for it.
Exactly. Stay curious, ask questions, and demand transparency from the companies that collect and use your data.
The future of mobile advertising, and indeed the future of the internet, is being shaped right now.
And we all have a role to play in ensuring that it's a future we can all feel good about.
It's our data, it's our privacy, and it's our responsibility.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of Affle India and the future of mobile advertising.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep diving deep.